Good afternoon and welcome to the violence in the wake of the Newtown tragedy and tragedies that are playing out in every day in some of our cities. We could not be focusing on a more important topic. For too long, we've seen these tragedies unfold despite the considerable body of evidence, research, and knowledge, and demonstrated competencies that we have to substantially reduce these incidences. We can and we must do everything we can to avert such tragedies of mass violence as we've experienced in Newtown, Aurora, Oak Creek, Tucson, Virginia Tech, Columbine, and to reduce systemic violence that plays out in our communities daily. And the President has provided us with a list of executive actions that will result in critical and necessary improvements in the administration of present law. The President, Vice President, and members of the House Democratic Gun Violence Prevention Task Force all agree that a comprehensive approach to reduce and prevent gun violence that includes additional provisions to protect public safety will require congressional action. Now, these provisions call on Congress to amend the law to require background checks for all gun sales, to reinstate the ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and to ensure that gun traffickers are held responsible for placing guns in the hands of criminals. But to reduce gun violence, we have to reduce violence generally. Therefore, it is an important part of the comprehensive approach to gun violence prevention, and that is that we need a comprehensive evidence-based prevention and intervention services for at-risk children and their families. There are now reams of research that shows that such services, starting early with teen pregnancy prevention to reduce the number of children born into dysfunctional families, prenatal care for all pregnancies to reduce the number of babies born with developmental disabilities, parental training for new parents to reduce child abuse and neglect. Child abuse and neglect is highly correlated with future crime. Making sure that children start school ready to learn so that they can progress towards graduation. Summer recreation, jobs for older teens, guaranteed college scholarships, mentorship programs, comprehensive job training, all have been shown in a comprehensive manner to not only reduce crime, but save much more money than they cost through avoided criminal justice and social service expenditures. Now, some believe that this problem is one that we can't afford, even if we tried. But we need to look at what we're presently doing. Right now, we're waiting for children to mess up and then spend all our money in prisons. In fact, if you look at the international incarceration rate, 50 to 200 per 100,000 countries around the world, Russia is the only one over 500, but the United States leads the world in incarceration rate at 743. That number is particularly egregious because the Pew Research Center has calculated that anything over 500 is actually counterproductive. You're messing up so many families, you've got so many felons in the area, you're spending so much money that you're actually not reducing crime, you're increasing crime by having any incarceration rate over 500 per 100,000. In the African American community, incarceration rate over 2,200, and in 10 states, they're locking up African Americans at the rate of almost 4,000 per 100,000. International average 50 to 200, and anything over 500 counterproductive. And so instead of spending all of our money on prisons, if we spent some of it on prevention and early intervention, we could do much better. We know that we're not only doing adults in terms of youth incarceration, we're overutilizing incarceration. We know that investments in education are important. This chart shows the correlation between dropping out of school and the trajectory young African American males are on. This chart shows that on the bottom part, African American males 25 to 30, high school dropouts are actually more likely today to be found in jail than in prison. Jail than on a job. About a third in jail, about 30% actually employed. Obviously, the more you learn, the more you earn. But this chart shows what we could be doing with the money that we're spending on counterproductive incarceration. If we reduce the 2,200 average per 100,000 to 500 per 100,000 in a community of 100,000, that's 1,752 fewer incarcerated, $50 million counterproductive incarceration. And if you say there may be 30,000 children in the area and divide the money and allocate it to 1/3 of the children that are at risk, $5,000 per child every year wasted in counterproductive incarceration. In 10 states, that bottom line is almost $10,000 per child per year. So when people say we can't afford to invest in prevention and early intervention, obviously we're wasting a lot more than we can spend right now. And in fact, you save more money than you spend when you invest in prevention and early intervention. If it's evidence-based programs, research-based programs, you'll save more than you spend. So obviously these numbers show that we can easily afford it. We have a task force that was appointed several weeks ago, and our job is to help dismantle the cradle-to-prison pipeline, as the Children's Defense Fund describes it, and try to create a cradle-to-college and career pipeline. These numbers show it's actually cheaper to create that kind of pipeline. Chairman Thompson and my colleagues on the task force will examine the President's proposals and proposals of others. We've been meeting frequently. We just had 2 meetings this morning, and we will have significant recommendations. I want to recognize now other members that may be here. I was advised that Mike Thompson, the chair of the task force, may be here. I don't see him yet, but I do see Elizabeth Esty from Newtown. If you want to make a comment. And Hank Johnson. Did I see Hank? Okay. Any other members here? And, from Delaware, Congressman Carney.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here today. Obviously, as you know, children have paid a terrible price, not just in Newtown, but around this country. In the cities in my district, every day, drawing a lot less attention. And so I want to thank Representative Scott and this distinguished panel, and I hope we will learn a lot and put those lessons to use with our colleagues to get meaningful action in this Congress to help children and families across America to grow up healthy and safe and lead productive lives. So again, thank you for your many years of work, and thank you for sharing with us best practices, and hopefully we can get it done this Congress. And thank you so much to this great leader on these issues, and I hope we have an opportunity to move them forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. I just want to thank everybody for coming today. As a member of the task force, I want to thank the leadership of our task force, in particular the chair, Mike Thompson, for his leadership, the co-chairs, which include my friend, Representative Bobby Scott behind me, who opened this session. But I'm also here to welcome 2 Delawareans, Chief Judge Chandley Kuhn, who is here to make a presentation. She's done just tremendous work as the Chief Judge of Family Court in our state, and she'll be presenting on some of that work. In particular, she has led what she calls the Girls Initiative in the state of Delaware, which attempts to address some of the issues that Representative Scott talked about that young adolescent girls face, and that is part of this whole puzzle, if you will. I'd also like to introduce and thank Professor Aaron Kupchik for coming today and for the great work that he does at the University of Delaware, and all of you for your participation. This is a really, really important issue. It's certainly important for the state that I live in, particularly the city of Wilmington, which is the commercial center of our state, the city in which I live, which has experienced unprecedented rates of shooting, mostly around drug trade, that implicates all the issues that Representative Scott talked about in terms of our failure in education, failure to get young urban, in particular black and Hispanic young men to graduate from high school, get a fine meaningful employment and instead are drawn by the drug trade on our streets that results in the kinds of shootings and killings that we've seen. Our hearts went out to those of us that are affected so directly by the shooting in Newtown, but we live every day in the city of Wilmington with individual shootings that result in fatalities for our young people in our state. So I want to thank all the people on the panel for your participation, all of your participants here today, and the members of our task force and the leadership. Thank you, Representative Scott, for the opportunity to share a few thoughts.
Thank you. We've been joined by Jackie Speier, who's had unfortunate experience with gun violence. Jackie.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and to all of our members of the panel. I'm going to be very brief. I was a victim of gun violence over 30 years ago when I was shot 5 times in Guyana in what was then called Jonestown. I carried the assault weapon ban in California back in 1989 on the assembly side when we were successful in getting a Republican governor to sign that bill into law. 32 Americans are killed each and every day due to gun violence. It's the equivalent of a mass killing in this country every single day. Our laws are riddled with exceptions, exemptions, and prohibitions that do not guarantee our safety. And I am grateful that you're all here and grateful for the panel for participating.
And the gentlelady from Texas, Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Let me thank all of you and thank the co-convener, Congressman Bobby Scott, for the opportunity to work with him over a number of years in the House Judiciary Committee, all of my members, some expressing a personal direct involvement with gun violence, to the chair who I see approaching, Congressman Thompson, who brings bona fides to this issue. I have had the sadness of seeing violence around me as a resident in a major urban city. And as a member of the Houston City Council almost some 20 plus years ago, we did something that was extraordinary in terms of Texas and certainly its affection for the Second Amendment. And that is to pass a gun safety ordinance, which may have seemed as a minor step, but it impacted the numbers of children every year that would wind up being shot by a weapon or would have shot themselves with a gun. And we legislated the idea of safety in storage and responsibility in gun safety, something that I think provides common ground. And so we all come at this with a different perspective, all of you do. I see so many people here, and I too am grateful for your presence, for the panelists, and look forward to working with the Gun Task Force under the leadership of certainly Congressman Scott and Thompson and many others, all of you, to really make this a reality, because all of us are real people with real stories. And I think coming together, we can make this what America is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. And we now want to recognize the chair of the task force, the gentleman from California, Mike Thompson.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, and everyone who understands how important this is and took time to be with us today. I'm honored to be here and be working with my friend Bobby Scott on this issue that he has championed for quite some time. Your Youth Promise Act is, I think, an important part of where we need to go in regard to dealing with gun violence, the prevention of gun violence. I'm here because I've been asked to chair this task force, and I do it as a gun owner, as a hunter, and as a combat veteran. So I know about guns. I believe in the Second Amendment. No one's getting my guns, and I don't plan to take anybody else's guns. But with gun ownership comes a responsibility, and we need to recognize that, and we need to make sure that responsible gun owners stand with us to try and address this very, very serious issue. We also know that it's a complex and comprehensive issue. It crosses all kinds of lines. You're not going to do away with a magazine or do away with a rifle or make a strong statement for the importance of mental health and fix this. It's going to take a combination of all of us working together on many, many different parts of this. So I want to thank you for your recognition of this and for your participation. Bobby Scott, thank you. You're a longtime leader in this area, and you're a very valuable part of our task force, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you, Mike. Now we can introduce the distinguished panelists who are with us today. And one of the things we've been focusing on and trying to make sure we emphasize is the need for evidence-based. So the people that are with us today have that kind of evidence. Dewey Cornell is a forensics clinical psychologist and professor of education at the Corey School of Education at the University of Virginia. Let me just briefly introduce them. Their complete bios have been either passed out or you can get it in the rear. Of course, anybody's been following what I've been saying on television. I've been quoting Dewey about every TV appearance I've had, so I'm looking forward to his comments. Peter Scharf, criminal justice researcher and professor at the Department of Global Health Systems, Department of Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. Dr. Aaron Kupchak, associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at the University of Delaware. Judge Chanley Johnson-Kahn, chief judge of the Family Court for the state of Delaware and member of the Association of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Brian Baumgardner, director, Evidence-Based Prevention and Intervention Support Center at Penn State University. Sheriff Gabe Morgan from my hometown of Newport News. And Rashad Burns, a 19-year-old student at the Pocomoke State University in West Virginia. We will ask them to speak in that area. If you'd like to come here, that'd be fine, or you can speak from the, coming up.